This is Millie Weaver, and I'm going to be updating you guys on some of the news around the Dayton, Ohio shooting and the El Paso shooting in Texas. So we already know that right now the left is blaming President Trump for this shooting, which I find completely uncalled for, given the fact that we've had many of these shootings happen under President Obama. You know, we've had Fort Hood, the Aurora shooting, Wisconsin, Sandy Hook, the Charleston church shooting, San Bernardino, Orlando, and more. Happened under Obama, yet because this happens under Trump, the media is blaming Trump. Well, Trump can't control who may or may not support him, and that is the narrative right now that the leftist mainstream media outlets are trying to create. They're trying to create the narrative that this shooter in El Paso, Patrick Crusius, was a Trump supporter and that he was a Republican. Now, we're going to be going over information that actually shows otherwise. What's interesting is the Gateway Pundit documented earlier this morning how when the name of Patrick Crusius was released, his My Life account originally stated that he was a Democrat. That's right, you heard me. They said that he was a Democrat on his My Life account, and then it was changed. Okay? So let's go ahead and pull up his My Life account so you guys can see for yourselves what it said and how people went on there and actually changed his account so that it could fit the leftist media's narrative to try to push that this was a radical white supremacist Republican Trump supporter. All right, so let's go, and we're gonna go through this. I'm gonna show you. We'll break down. So the first record they show is that Bright at I believe it's 2:46. Okay, they show at 2:46. It says Patrick Crusius, 21 years old, born, July 27th, 1998. It's the right guy. But then it also shows that he's a member of the Democratic Party. He's a Democrat. Okay, it shows he's Caucasian. He's a Democrat. Okay, that's all we need to know right there. It shows it on his My Life. Then someone goes in there and changes it at 2:50. It then says that he is still a Democrat, but it says that he's African American, and then it says that he's a former campaign worker for Donald Trump and a QAnon conspiracy theorist and an incel. So somebody changed it so that the people would get the narrative out there that he's a Trump supporter or that he worked for the Trump campaign and that he's a QAnon conspiracy theorist. Then at 2:52, it says that it was changed to say that he was a Republican, QAnon member, incel, NRA supporter. His racist manifesto has already been found online, despite the GOP's desperate editing of this website. Is one of yours. It's another white male Republican. It still says he's a member of the Democrat Party and that he's a white male. Then, finally, it's changed to say that he is a member of the political party, the Republican political party. Somebody put that in there. And they also try to say that his religion is Jewish and he's Hispanic. So somebody went in there and changed it as well. So what is this guy then? What is he? Because that's what everyone wants to know. We know that the leftist media likes to try to say, oh, look, he's a white male. Oh, look, he might have conservative posts, as to try to blame it on all Trump supporters or all conservatives, which is a major fallacy in itself. Just because one guy goes out and does this, Trump can't control who may or may not support him. But we're going to delve more into Patrick Crusius and his manifesto, because his manifesto actually indicates and proves that, if anything, he had a lot more progressive ideologies than he even had conservative ideologies. In fact, you couldn't really even say he was a conservative at all, because the guy wanted universal health care and a universal basic income, a UBI. Does that sound familiar? I know that Andrew Yang promotes a UBI. So his ideologies were actually more Democrat and more socialist, which, gee, That sounds familiar. Democrat socialist ideologies. Also did mention he had some racist beliefs where he didn't want race mixing. Okay, so the guy sounds like he's a Nazi or a National Socialist, as we all know, which are not conservatives. So here, let's look what his manifesto says. It says, in the near future, America will have to initiate a basic universal income to prevent widespread poverty and civil unrest as people lose their jobs. It says, achieving ambitious social projects like universal health care and UBI would become far more likely to succeed if tens of millions of dependents are removed. So there you have it, okay? He's literally saying that he believes that we need to remove all these dependents so that we can have all of these social programs that he wants. Essentially, get rid of the undesirables so that we can have all our beloved social welfare programs. Gee, sounds kind of a Nazi-ish or National Socialist to me. It sounds a bit nihilist too. And we're going to be delving far into what nihilism is and how nihilism right now is plaguing our society and the links of nihilism to liberalism. Okay, so we will be going into that some more too. But he also goes into environmentalism. The guy was worried about environmentalism. Just like we hear all these millennials talking about, oh, you know, the world's going to end in 12 years. It's not just millennials, actually. It's the younger generation. It's this new generation of young 20-year-olds, young 18-year-olds that are so paranoid that the world is going to end in 12 years, they feel like, what's the point of continuing on? What's the point of life? Why not just, go end it today if we're all going to die in 12 years? This is the nihilism that the left has created. And so this is what he says in his manifesto. He says, the decimation of our environment is creating a massive burden for future generations. Corporations are heading the destruction of our environment by shamelessly over-harvesting resources. That doesn't necessarily sound like a Republican now, does it? It doesn't. It doesn't sound conservative. It sounds like the same talking points that you hear from liberals who have a nihilistic point of view on the world and on our current, state of government. It's just, okay, so we can go into this all day about Patrick Crusius and everything about him, but just one more quote, okay? He says, the best solution to this for now would be to divide America into a confederacy of territories with at least one territory for each race. Okay, so that's when he's talking about racial division. Well, what I want to say is this. I have actually interviewed plenty of Democrats and liberals, and many of them actually African American or, minority races that advocate for segregation. It's the weirdest thing. It's like when you hear, about some of these liberals complaining about gentrification, meaning they don't want people of other minorities moving into black neighborhoods because they feel like they're going to be moved out, and that's what they call gentrification. So you hear this talked about amongst Democrats as well. So it's not that surprising. It still looks like, according to this guy's manifesto, although he is a racist, his ideologies are very progressive and very liberal. But does it really even matter at the end of the day what this guy was into? Some could say yes, some could say no. We all know that the left is going to try to use it to try to push their agenda, which we all know is a pro-gun control agenda, an anti-gun agenda, an anti-American agenda, because we have the Second Amendment as part of our Constitution, which gives us the right to bear arms, the right to protect ourselves. Immediately after the shooting took place, what happened? Well, we all know what happened. Before the bodies are even cold, the Democrats get out there and start pushing their anti-gun narrative, their gun control policies, and start demanding gun reform now. We need to be focusing on the families and aiding these people and, respecting them. But at the same time, we're forced to try to combat these lies that the Democrats put out there. One of which is that we're going to be safer somehow if we ban guns. Are we really? Somebody tweeted to me and said, I said, what? Next, they'll use bombs, they'll use knives, they'll use vehicles. Evil can find a way to cause harm if they want to. This is a God problem, because we'll get into the next shooter, the Dayton shooter that happened within 12 hours of this last shooter. The Dayton shooter is wearing patches on his shirt that's, anti-God, atheistic, Satanist. So before we get into that, what I'll say is this. In response to this comment, where they're basically saying they could, they would rather take their chances with being stabbed or being bombed or being run over than, being shot at. That was their anti-gun argument. Well, I said, well, they're going to figure out a way to get those weapons anyway. And if you're so worried about your safety and you think that gun rights somehow make you more in danger, you're always welcome to move to another country that doesn't have gun rights. You could move down to Mexico. In fact, you could go right across the border of El Paso and go to Juarez. Juarez was ranked the most dangerous city in the entire world back in 2009 because they had nonstop warring cartel gangs that were shooting up everyone. They had mass shootings left and right. Mexico doesn't have the right to bear arms. They don't have gun rights in Mexico. So if you're so worried, you think that not having gun rights is going to make you safer, go down and live in Mexico because, hey, they've already banned guns there. And, maybe you'll be safer there. It's just ridiculous, okay? It's ridiculous. My solution here is this. My solution is everyone needs to condemn the violence. And that includes the Democrats who routinely call for violence, okay? Democrats are routinely calling for violence where we have Antifa out there smashing people in the streets, ramping up violence in the country. We have Antifa. Antifa was threatening to go down to El Paso, and initially they were making threats that they were going to attack the Border Patrol and attack Trump supporters and conservatives, okay? That was something that was happening more recently, those threats. They sent out flyers. So everyone on both sides of the aisle needs to condemn the violence, okay? But I think that really more Americans should have the response of, I'm going to take my safety into my own hands. I'm going to get the right to bear arms. If I haven't yet, I'm going to go get a gun. I'm going to get a concealed carry permit. I'm going to have that gun on me so that in the event of a shooting or some evil idiot wants to try to come in and shoot people, I'm going to be able to protect myself, and I'm going to be able to aid and assist others around me. It's like, if in fact, okay, so some people are still skeptical. They're like, is this a deep state operation? Is this a situation where we have, yes, people dying, but maybe there's some staging here, maybe there's a patsy, maybe there's whatever. Look, I don't know any of that, okay? I can only point out and tell you the facts that are presented before me, and you can come to your own conclusion. But what I do know is that regardless of that, it still doesn't justify taking away guns, because taking away guns isn't going to solve the problem. The Hegelian dialectic is what? Problem, reaction, solution. Okay, so what's the problem? We've got all these mass shootings. What's the reaction? Fear. Fear. It's all the fear to get people to react, right? Fear is the reaction so that they can get the solution. So what's the solution that the deep state might want? Gun control. They want to take away our rights. They want to make us a subservient slave populace that can be easily controlled because we don't have gun rights. So my solution is, let's start spreading the message that use your fear that they're trying to instill with terrorism in the public into you, into America. Use that fear to motivate yourself and motivate others to go get a gun yourself, go train, get a concealed carry permit, and take your safety into your own hands. The problem, reaction for fear, the solution is get a gun and defend yourself and defend others. Police take a lot of time to get to these shootings in most instances, and we will get into the Dayton, Ohio shooting. Okay, so the Dayton, Ohio shooting, was an instance where the police actually did get there really quickly. The police got there in like a minute, okay, in Dayton, Ohio. But apparently a lot of damage can be done in a minute. The people in the restaurant or the bar that were shot, they were the only ones within that minute that could have done something instantly, okay? And the police, they got there pretty quickly because they were already patrolling the neighborhood, and it could have been a lot worse. It really could have been. Okay, let's get into who the Dayton, Ohio shooter is, if you guys haven't yet heard. His name is Connor Betts. He's 24. He's been identified in the Dayton, Ohio shooting that left 9 people dead, many more injured. There's an image posted that's been circulating with him wearing a shirt. And the shirt has a patch on it that says, "Against all gods." And, I mean, it looks like all the patches that these anarchists or Antifa guys all wear. I mean, it really does. And the saying "against all gods" has been linked to atheism and Satanism because there's a lot of other, you know, the "against all odds" has a lot of Satanist apparel and atheist apparel. It's essentially, it just goes back to the whole root with nihilism and the problem that we have in our country right now. You know, many people would say we have a gun problem. I think we have a God problem. We've taken, that's not to say everyone that doesn't believe in God is going to go shoot people up. No, it's to say that our culture, our society is sick right now because we've taken God out of our society. We've taken God out of our schools. We've been inundated with just violent video games, pornographic content, like all this craziness in our society where up is down and down is up. They're trying to normalize all this weird stuff where, you know, you got these drag queens with little kids and these kids are being sexualized. I mean, our culture right now is sick right now. It needs some kind of intervention. And I'm going to get into nihilism and liberalism. Now, I'm kind of going to go over Strauss. He was a German-American political philosopher who was born in Germany during the whole, you know, Nazi stuff, and he came to the United States. So he's got a little bit of a good perspective that we might just want to kind of look at and examine so that we can get a better idea of this whole nihilism, fascist liberalism that we're seeing in the United States. It's ironic because we see all these Antifa, so we think that maybe they're not fascists. No, the Antifa are fascists. They're left fascists. So Strauss taught that liberalism in its modern form, which is oriented towards the universal freedom as opposed to ancient liberalism, which is oriented toward human excellence, contained within it an intrinsic tendency towards extreme relativism, which in turn led to 2 types of nihilism. The first was a brutal nihilism, that which we saw with the Nazis and with the Bolsheviks. So notice we saw it with both the communist Bolsheviks and with the National Socialists, the Nazis. And then, in on of Enlightenment, though, try to destroy all traditions, history, ethics, and morals, and moral standards, and replace them by force under which nature and mankind are then subjected and conquered. We're seeing that today in our society, where you have this extreme leftist progressive ideology that wants to come in and force their ideology on everyone and subject us to being forced to say whatever pronoun, being forced to believe there's climate change, being forced to believe that drag kids should be allowed to be sexually exploited, that 3-year-olds can decide to have a sex change. I mean, they're trying to wipe away traditional culture, and the evidence of them trying to wipe away traditional culture is the fact that they're trying to erase conservatives and conservative ideologies, traditional ideologies, off of the internet. We've been seeing it with the censorship on Google, YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter. All of these social media platforms have already started trying to wipe away and erase and destroy, to annihilate morals, ethics, God. I think on YouTube they've already started banning content that's pro-life, that's Christian, that's anti-abortion. So we're already seeing that, okay? And then the second type is the gentle nihilism, which is the stage, in a lot of ways, we're already in. So the stage of the Nazis is when you have the hard takeover, okay? But right now we're in the gentle nihilism, where you just have all this liberal expression of progressivism, and you're forced to say this gender. You know, you see it in the universities, the college campuses. It then will transmute to the Nazis. It will transmute to the Bolsheviks, where we have a hard overthrow, where we have people being violent, Antifa being violent. How nihilism, the people who engage in nihilism in that belief system, who don't believe there's God, they don't believe that there's any real reason or purpose for living, they don't think that they have anything to give or live for, society's failed them. Those people, they think that, you know, they're trying to essentially... Well, anyway, I'm digressing. We're going to go on to talking more about the shooters. Right now we have information that says that this shooter, Connor Betts, 24, he actually shot up a bar that had his sister in it. So his sister is one of the 9 that are dead right now in his mass shooting, which, of course, the media wants to try to make it all out to be a political issue, but we don't know if there was some familial disputes, some issues. We know from looking at records, his sister was actually a registered Democrat. So, I mean, whatever that means. He also worked at Chipotle. So what? I mean, they're already trying to connect this guy, Patrick Crusius, because they're trying to say that a social media account that may or may not be a link to him, they haven't confirmed it yet, that he liked a Paul Joseph Watson post. And he liked a post that had an image that was spelled out in guns that said Trump. So they're trying to connect him to Trump, and they're trying to connect him to Paul Watson just because he had liked something. Okay, but then, on the other hand, look, this guy, Connor Betts, he worked at Chipotle. His sister and him were Democrats. So they're not going to try to connect that then and try to make it into a political issue. What I'm getting at here is I don't think that that's necessarily as key as the whole nihilism thing, that these people have just been completely disenfranchised. And the bottom line is this. The left wants to continue to make this into a anti-gun, gun control issue. They want to attack the NRA, attack the president over, and Obama has literally, all these shootings happened under Obama, okay? Yet Trump is being blamed as the cause of these shootings. It's ridiculous. Now, many people are saying, okay, regardless of anything, okay, well, I lost my train of thought there. Basically, prosecutors are now calling for the death penalty for Patrick Crusius, which I feel is the right thing, which will be kind of interesting because a lot of liberals tend to have the perspective that they don't believe in the death penalty. They don't agree with it. So I'm finding it interesting that like 90%, I put out a poll on my Twitter, 90% of the people are saying, yes, give him the death penalty. They want him dead. They want him to be hung publicly for doing this mass shooting, which he killed a lot of people, committed a lot of carnage. If he's found guilty in a court of law, then, you know, I'm all for it. You know, people need to learn a lesson not to go out and commit these crimes, not to go kill people and take their lives. You can't just, you know, get away with that and sit in a jail that you get health care and you get taken care of and fed and on taxpayer dime. So it's just interesting to see. So prosecutors are going to be moving forward on that. Alex Jones is just about to start his broadcast. And Alex Jones is amazing, okay? Just a couple days before this shooting event happened, Alex Jones was predicting that there was going to be some kind of domestic terror event that linked QAnon and linked him to it and was going to be used to demonize QAnon and be demonizing him. What's crazy is kid you not, this was on Thursday, and then the shooting happens on Saturday. So I'm going to be really curious to see what Alex Jones has to say today on his live show, on his radio show. So I'm going to be tuning into that, which that's about to start soon. It's going to be starting in about 10 minutes here. It's going to be starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 4 p.m. Central Time. So I suggest everyone, as soon as I get off here, because I'm going to be getting off pretty quickly, I suggest you go over to Alex Jones's channel and tune in, because he has a lot of information. He has been delving into this, and he has his own perspective on what's really behind all of these shootings. And he's also going to tell about why he was able to predict that this was coming. He predicted it on Thursday, and then it happened. It's amazing. This isn't the first time. He predicted so many other terrorist events and tragedies and disasters. He's predicted a lot. So I'm going to be going that. You guys can go to Infowars.com, and then you can go to the section that says radio show and click on his show. But I just want to remind you guys, I'm going to be continuing to update you as these situations and updates and information comes to us. You can also go to Infowars.com to find out more information and our articles that our writers put out. I ask you to please also support me directly on Subscribestar at Millie Weaver on Subscribestar. I really need your guys' help and support more than ever right now. I would love to be able to get some kind of personal security to come with me when I go to these crazy liberal protests, because the liberals are upping the violence. They're getting more and more hostile because the mainstream media keeps on spreading these lies about Republicans, about conservatives, and about Trump supporters, which I'm working hard to try to dismantle, because we need to be able to show the truth to all Americans so that they can be woken up and get out of this spell. So please support me. I'm going to be going around. I'm going to be covering the elections, covering the Democrats, their rallies, their crowd sizes, covering Trump's rallies, showing that Trump supporters are good, loving, Americans-loving people, what they really, truly want for the country, showing the side that the mainstream media won't show. So please go to Subscribestar, Millie Weaver on Subscribestar, to support me. And thank you so much for following me along with me in this podcast. This is Millie Weaver signing off.